Howdy, it's Dr. Alejandro.
And I'm Dr. Emily.
And as many of you know, we have 4 clinics on our first 3 years in practice.
If you're ready to level up your business, find us at paththovictorychiro.com to get on the path to victory. Are you a great leader or are you a great manager? In this episode, we're going to be talking about the difference between leadership and management, and then 5 practices to become a great leader and a great manager. And so there is a difference in this idea between leadership and management. But before we get into all that, I want you guys to know that this all comes from what's called EOS systems, so entrepreneurial operating systems. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's based on this book called Traction by Gino Wickman. If you have a chiropractic practice or if you even own a business, this is something I highly recommend reading, Traction, the book, because it will completely change the game for the way that you do systems in your practice. If you have no SOPs, if you are just kind of flying by the seat of your pants every day, you really need to read the book Traction. Okay, so I won't go too far into that, but just know that everything we do in our victory systems, a lot of it is based around this idea of EOS and the book Traction. And so from the EOS comes this idea of LMA, which is leadership, management, and accountability. And they kind of describe it as this math problem. So L plus M equals A, which means leadership plus management equals accountability. Accountability is just a byproduct of becoming a better leader and manager, not only within your team, but for yourself also. So I want to talk about what being a great leader looks like. Listen, there are thousands of styles of being a great leader. Some great leaders operate as a drill sergeant, and they're very frank and they're very brash, and they don't take anything, right? So they will be very cut and dry. They're going to be very strict and they don't take any nonsense, right? And then there's other great leaders who are more nurturers. They're more caring. They don't mind if you want to spill all about your personal life. There's no one right way to be a leader, but there are definitely 2 non-negotiables when it comes to leadership. The first one is this: you genuinely have to care about your people. It doesn't matter what line of work you're in, if you're a chiropractor, if you're functional medicine, if you own a car dealership, if you own a tire shop, you have to genuinely care about your people, because then they will want to actually care and be at their work, at their job. So that's the first non-negotiable. The second one is you have to want to be great. And I know that sounds so simple, so cliche, but there is a certain amount of commitment, time, and energy that you want to put in to actually being in your business. Everybody says they want to own their own business and they want to have their own time and flexibility and financial freedom, but not everybody actually wants to be great, and they don't want to put in the time. They're not committed, and they don't want to put in the energy either. And so this is a non-negotiable to leadership. You have to want to be great, and you have to genuinely care about your people. And we talk about the second one, you have to want to be great all the time in this podcast. So I won't get too much into that, but once we're clear on those 2 non-negotiables, we can be clear on our leadership. So to be a great leader, start with those 2 things. Now, leadership and management, as I mentioned earlier, are just 2 different topics entirely. So over here, I want you guys to picture on the left, we've got leadership. If I were to write leadership on one side, draw a line, and then I'm going to write management on the other side. On this one side, leadership, things are working on the business. You're working on things. You're going behind the scenes. You're building out your systems and processes. This is where really high level thinking happens. This is where you can provide clear direction to your people to let them know the work that they're doing and that you're doing as well, where the whole direction of the company is going. This is creating an opening and an opportunity for people. This is what we do when we're not seeing patients. This is what Alejandro and I do when we are not actually in the business and working in the practice. We're building out playbooks. We're building out marketing stuff. We are working on our employee training book, our employee manuals, all the handbooks, all the SOPs behind what we actually do on a day-to-day basis. We're building all that out. It's working on the business. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. On this right side for management, I want you guys just to think of working in the business. So in the business, what that looks like is just your day-to-day. It's the actual doing. It's the communication that goes on within your team. It's setting clear expectations for your team. This is the actual managing of people, and it's the people you work with every single day. They're in two entirely different disciplines. Leadership and management are very, very different. Somebody can be a wonderful leader, a wonderful visionary, but they may have no idea how to manage people over here. And so, and vice versa, right? Somebody can be an amazing manager, but they don't have a lot of vision for the company. They're not great at this high level thinking and what's coming next, what's in 3 years, what's in 5 years, what's in 10 years for the company. They may not have that ability to think as a leader. So it's really important that we understand the difference between those two. And if you are the solo person, if you're the only person running your practice, it's really important that you have to hone in on both of those skills and combine them and become both a master at both of those. So I want to jump into 5 different management practices without taking too much time. I'm going to expand on this in a part 2, but I want to just really jump in and talk about 5 of the most important management practices. So I want to start with this quote because I think it's super important, and we can do a whole different episode on hiring. But this quote says, "The moment you feel like you need to tightly manage someone, you made a hiring mistake." So the moment you feel like you need to tightly manage someone, you made a hiring mistake. This is something in the EOS systems they talk about. It's a really simple phrase. We are slow to hire and quick to fire. And that may sound really harsh and really cold, but the point is, if someone doesn't fit into your core values, if you can reprimand them, you can say, hey, you did this wrong, let's correct it. If you can pour into them time after time again, and you're training and training and training, and you feel like you still have to constantly be on their butt to get things done, you made a hiring mistake and that person needs to go. And it doesn't mean they're a bad person, okay? I'm not going to expand too much on this, but just know that you should not feel like you need to micromanage your team if you did the training, if you follow the systems correctly. So, the job as managers is to create an environment where people can thrive. It's very simple. So we have an office manager in our practice, and her job is to simply create an environment where people can thrive. What does that look like? Well, first and foremost, and this is the number one practice, is you have to create clear expectations. We talk about this idea of L plus M equals A, leadership plus management equals accountability. How do you hold your people accountable? You can't do that without clear expectations. So number one, create clear expectations, and that is for both your employees and for you. Make sure that it's an equal exchange. Make sure you expect and they know what you expect of them, and vice versa. This is what you can expect from me. It's your job as a manager to keep both sets of expectations crystal clear and, of course, communicate when they're not being met. Okay? Because what happens is we get so frustrated. If you have staff, you can relate to this. We get so frustrated when so-and-so's not doing their job. I don't understand. I told that person like twice that they were supposed to do X, Y, Z, and they still aren't doing it, or they're still doing it wrong. Okay, does that person actually know that? Have you actually sat down with them and said, hey, this is what I expect of you, and if it doesn't get done, we're going to have to either move your task to somebody else, or we're going to have to talk about your future employment here. Okay? You have to clearly communicate what your expectations are of your staff. Otherwise, they don't know. And then resentment builds up, and you're resentful of them, and they're resentful of you because they feel like they have no clarity on what's been going on. So your expectations, number one, what is their role? What are their tasks when they come into the practice? When they come into your business, what is their job, right? Be very, very clear on that. What's their to-dos? What's their day-to-day look like? What is their weekly task? What's their monthly task? What's their quarterly task? What's their yearly task? Communicate all that. Of course, even before you did that, hopefully they know what your core values are, your mission, and where the company is going. Those 3 things. What are your core values? What's your mission statement? And where is the company going? With that, and this is all part of the EOS system, highly recommend that book Traction again. Setting and completing quarterly rocks. These are basically quarterly goals that are going to get you to your 1-year target, to your 3-year picture, to your 10-year picture. Okay, so AKA you want to hit measurables for your staff. Each staff has to have a measurable. They have to have a goal assigned to them because it puts more accountability on that person. So for this first management practice, I want you to just ask yourself, are your expectations crystal clear? Number 2 practice is communicating well. Communication is a two-way street. Do not assume and do not guess that your staff or your coworkers know what you're thinking, because they probably don't, especially if they have not worked with you for a long time and they're pretty new, like 6, 9 months, maybe even a year. They still cannot read your mind. They don't know the way you're thinking. It's super important to communicate. I am a strong believer that there's no such thing as over communication. There's a way to be inefficient at communicating, but there's no such thing as over communicating. It actually takes a person 7 times of hearing something to finally get it. So I need you guys to know that for your staff. I know you can say, oh, I told them that last week. Oh, but I'm pretty sure I brought that up to them. They don't know. You have to repeat yourself 7 times, and it's like they're hearing it for the first time. So do not assume they know that. So what's a good way to not assume that they understood something or that they heard you say something? Simply ask. Have these difficult conversations. Hey, I noticed that this wasn't done and I asked you to do this last week. Is there confusion in this? Do you need more clarity on this task? Just simply ask. And then they'll say, oh my gosh, I had no idea that that's what you wanted me to do. I'm so sorry. I'll get right on it. Right? I've had that so many times where I'm like, I know I communicated this to them, but they just weren't there. They weren't present, or they didn't hear me, or they were multitasking. It's so many things can happen. You just have to over communicate, especially when we're in peak hour with patients and we feel like we're in a hurry and we're just like, oh yeah, it's just easy to like walk away and be like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then you kind of put it to the side. Or here's another scenario. Something happens and you're like, oh gosh, I really need to bring that up because that was not done well. That person made a mistake, whether it was patient care, customer service related, it wasn't right. You need to just jot that down and say, talk to them at the end of the shift or at the latest the next day, because you need to definitely nip that in the bud right away. Communication has to happen like fast, really fast. And of course, don't assume. Those are like the 2 main things with communicating. Do not assume, do not guess, and then talk about things right away. So spend the time to get on the same page. I'm going to be in the next episode talking about more communication tips, so stay tuned for that. Practice number 3, management practice number 3, is have the right meeting pulse. So within this EOS system, there's something called a meeting pulse. So we meet weekly with our team every single Tuesday, and we check in. We talk about positives. We talk about what's going well in our personal lives, what's going well in the business. We talk about our scorecard, which is all of our stats that we go over weekly. And then we jump into our quarterly rocks, which are our quarterly goals. If we're on track, if we're off track, if we're meeting them, who's assigned to those rocks, and if we need to do any issue solving based on those rocks. Then we talk about our to-dos from the week, and then we talk about issues that we need to discuss. That's our same meeting agenda every single week. And this is all in that book, Traction. I promise you it'll change your business if you haven't already done so. But have the right meeting pulse. And so in these meetings, what's really cool about a level 10 meeting is that there's an even exchange of dialogue. So it's not just me talking the whole meeting. I would hate that. And I know my team would hate that too. Everybody on the team gets a chance to share. They get a chance to share their positive from the week, and then they get a chance to share what their scorecard is, if they have a measurable they have to hit, and then something based on the rocks. And then of course, if there's any issues, they have input on that as well. It's very, very important that your team feels heard. We want to make sure that they are getting that input. They're able to say something if they feel like they need to speak up, because sometimes they don't feel like they have that, right? And so give them a voice, give them an opportunity to say something. And also, it empowers them. If you give them a quarterly goal, or quarterly rock is what we call that, it empowers them to take some accountability, right? The way that a business thrives isn't just because of one person. And if so, you have what we call key man risk, which is a totally different topic, but that's not good if everything is relying on one person. It has to be equally divided to all people. This person is assigned to Susie, right? This goal, this quarterly rock is assigned to Mark. This goal here is assigned to Sally. And so Sally, how are we doing? What do we need to better this? Susie, what's going on with this? Why are we dropping the ball here? What can we do to improve, right? And it's not shifting blame, but it's putting accountability on someone. And when they feel that, when they are given a task, when they're given a goal, it's like, oh, this company needs me. This business needs me to thrive. And I'm going to do everything I can, because if I hit that measurable, then we all succeed, right? It just betters the business as a whole. And so part of that is not only allowing people to have a voice, but they are able to report their weekly measurables or their quarterly measurables or their monthly measurables, whatever it is. And so it's just connecting the dots and the circles with all these reports. Management practice number 4 is having quarterly conversations. And so we just got done with this. Actually, we just had 3 quarterly meetings for the 3 victories that we are in charge of. And these are supposed to be actually 8-hour days where we sit down, we talk about what's working, what's not working. We check in from the quarter. There's a whole agenda for it. These are all part of the EOS systems, of course. But the main thing is making sure you're having those quarterly conversations. It doesn't have to be 8 hours. We typically keep it to 3 or 4. But there's usually issues that we need to talk about, especially if we set rocks or goals from the previous quarter and we did not hit them. We need to figure out why we didn't hit them and what we can do to hit it the next quarter, if it's still applicable, of course. We go over our core values. We make sure that everybody is still upholding those core values. Is everybody in the right seat? Do we have the right people? Do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? We always do this with all of our victories. We just make sure we're on track. Basically, we're just checking in for the quarter to make sure we hit our yearly goals. So that's number 4, is making sure you're having those quarterly check-ins. This is often the times where we'll do our employee quarterly reviews as well. Okay, in the 5th and final management practice, I know there are many more, but these are the main ones that you need to focus on. So I'm going to open with this quote for the last practice management tip. No amount of money will induce someone to lay down his life, but he will do so for a yellow ribbon, which is a quote by Napoleon. The idea here behind this quote is that no amount of money can really make somebody want to get up and go to a chiropractic office where they're dealing with people in pain all day. And, they are working there for sometimes a 7-hour shift and it's hard and you got to ask for money from people and you're doing therapies on people. Sometimes it's not all glorious, but when we recognize, when we reward them, when we acknowledge that they are literally part of changing these people's lives, they're responsible for changing the trajectory of their health journey. That is something to be proud of. That is something to lay down your life for. Anybody can get up and go work at Chipotle for $15 an hour, but you're not going to get the fulfillment that you do from working at a practice like Victoryspinalcare. It's just not going to happen because of the way we reward and we recognize these people. So I just wanted to point that out, that sometimes staff doesn't always want to be rewarded with money. Sometimes they're just looking for a pat on the back or like a, hey, good job, bud. You need to keep it up. Like, you are changing this clinic for the better. We value you, right? People need to hear this. So this number 5 management practice, reward and recognize. Make sure you're giving people the pat on the back or the kick in the butt that they need to do better. It's super important, number 1, to give feedback, good or bad, right away. Timing is urgent and important here. So what I was mentioning earlier, when, mid-shift, somebody made a mistake in front of a patient, or for example, we had cups left on a patient when we were cupping a patient for 20 minutes, and they're only supposed to be on there 10 minutes max. And she was so sorry. She was obviously apologetic. I pulled her to the side in that moment. I said, don't ever do that again. People's time is valuable. She could have been injured. She could have been, she could have sued us. Like, there are so many things that could have gone wrong. It was important in that moment that I took that staff and I said, don't ever do that again, because it could go very badly for us, right? If I would have waited till a week later, a month later to criticize her, she wouldn't have understood it, right? It just wouldn't have hit home as hard as it would have if we nailed it in the head, nipped it in the bud right there, right? Number 2, never violate this one. Never violate this one. Always criticize in private and praise in public. With staff, this is super important, especially if you have females on your team and they're sensitive. You have to make sure that when you reprimand somebody, just like I did with that staff, I pulled her to the side. I pulled her into a private room. I said, don't ever do that again. I would never say that in front of the entire team. I would never try to put somebody down in front of everybody, because it makes people feel really bad and it makes them embarrassed, and they're not going to want to speak up, or they're going to be so afraid to make a mistake that they're just coming into their job every day and walking on eggshells. That's not cool. So we criticize in private, we praise in public. However, when this same staff goes above and beyond, I notice she's coming in early to work every day. I notice she's the last to leave. I notice she's going above and beyond to clean, to dust our blinds. I'm going to call her out in front of everybody. Hey, Sally, thank you so much for dusting the blinds. That was really great. We really could have used a good dusting in the office because it was getting pretty dusty. So thank you so much for doing that. I really recognize that you're working hard in this office. I'm going to say that in front of everybody because it illuminates her. It builds her up. It builds up her confidence. It builds up her self-esteem. That's such a cool thing to say in front of everybody, right? So that's the second thing. Number 3. Your job as a manager is to be the boss. You are not their buddy. Okay, so remember this. We're friendly, but we're not friends. There's a really thin line that we have to keep with our staff. And it's hard, especially when you're young. And a lot of these people who you hired probably are your friends, right? You're like, oh, I just got started and I needed somebody to sit at my front desk and answer my phones. And it just happened to be my good friend, Jessica. And I was like, yo, Jessica, I need your help. Do you mind answering my phones for a little bit? And here we are 2 years later and she's still answering my phones. Okay. The different situation, but there's still a clear line that we have to draw because you write their paycheck. You sign off on their paycheck. You are the authority. You have to keep that authority. You need their respect. So make sure it's really clear that you are not friends and that they won't take advantage of you because they will if you do not do that. I've had issues with this in the past where we started. I loved our first front desk person. She was amazing. She was a friend. She was that friend who I was like, hey, we need a front desk person. Do you mind just hopping in? I didn't know how long she'd stay. She ended up staying like almost a year or so. But there was no respect. We were equal. And that was not how it should be because it was really hard to tell her, you're not doing something right. You need to do this better. It was really, really hard for me. Number 4, we follow what we call a 3-strike rule, and we have a whole written out manual for this, an employee handbook. If somebody violates one of our core values or they make a mistake, for example, the cupping situation, that would be what we call strike 1. And so you're going to meet with that person separately, not just pulling them aside mid-shift. You're going to meet with them outside of the shift, maybe at lunch or after hours, and you're going to talk about, hey, you did this. Here's 3 data points to help them understand why it was wrong, why it was a weakness, a failure, or an issue. You're going to clearly document what happened. You're going to give them 30 days to correct the issue. If it still happens again within 30 days, you're going to do a strike 2 meeting. You're going to say, hey, the issues have not been resolved. You did this again. Here's the 3 data points again of why this wasn't right. And if you do this again, now we're going to have to talk about your future employment. And that's typically how we handle that. Sometimes we don't even get to 3 strikes because whatever it was so blatantly bad, but typically we give people a lot of leniency. With the cupping situation, it's a whole other thing, but there was a lot going on that day, so that wouldn't have been a reason to fire by any chance. So I want to ask you as a manager, as a leader, are you rewarding and are you rewarding and recognizing? Are you having quarterly conversations? Number 4. Number 3, are you having the right meeting pulse? Are you even meeting with your team at all on a weekly basis to make sure you're on the same page? Number 2, are you communicating? Is communication a 2-way street? Are you assuming things? Are you having difficult conversations? And then number 1, the number 1 practice for management, are you having clear expectations? Do they have clear expectations of you? Do you have clear expectations of them? These are 5 management strategies that have really helped me get better as a people manager and ultimately as a leader. I hope that helps you guys. If y'all have any more questions, I love talking about this kind of stuff. Please message us, DM us, go to our website, pathtovictorychiro.com, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.